Oh, it is on. The On Fryer podcast is upon us. I am your host, Derek Togerson. Darnay Tripp, our usual co-host, is out enjoying some very deserved quality time with the family this week. So it's just going to be me talking at you for a little bit. Actually, that's not entirely true. We're going to have a little bit of video and audio from one Mason Miller. Yes, the guy who was the most dominant closer in all of Major League Baseball. The Padre, the guy who was fantastic down the stretch, set records in the postseason. He went on Major League Baseball Network and he talked about why he wants to be a closer instead of a starter. He talked about what he learned from Ruben Niebla about being a pitcher versus a thrower. And oh, by the way, he also talked about being the newest member of a Team USA World Baseball Classic roster that suddenly is loaded to bear. This is far and away the best roster the U.S. has ever had. My gut says it's coming down to them and Team Japan when you're talking about the best teams in the World Baseball Classic and in the world in general. Probably going to have another epic final between those two countries. We're going to talk about all that over the next half hour or so. But first and foremost, here's your walk-up music. All right, as you may have seen there, OG's is the sponsor of the On Fire podcast. Thank you for all that they do. They got all kinds of new food specials and beers. And by the way, go there and get one of the special beers. You get to take home an On Fire pint glass, courtesy of us and OG. So thank you for all they do for the On Fire podcast. All right, first up, let's talk about Mason Miller, because this is the dude who, yes, he's the subject of trade talks with the New York Mets of all teams, who could have had Edwin Diaz and let him walk to the Dodgers. So now they're looking for a new closer. They're probably trying to get a little bit cheaper, maybe a little bit younger, maybe a little bit more effective. But they're talking to the Padres about bringing over Mason Miller and a whole bunch of other guys, Jeremiah Estrada, Nick Pivetta. They're talking about bringing over some arms because the Mets need arms almost as much as the Padres do, certainly in their bullpen, which is no longer near as good as it has been in the past. And the Padres have the best bullpen in all of Major League Baseball. So they're talking to them about Mason Miller. And no, all the reports out there and all the folks that I've talked to, they all say that this is not a Xander Bogaerts, Francisco Lindor, Fernando Tatis Jr. kind of thing. We're not swapping superstars, trying to send contracts out of town. This is simply you got a young, controllable stud that we want to get our hands on, and we'll give you some other pieces to do that. So the Mets probably do have the kind of minor league system that can, if they part with a couple of their top prospects, the Nolan McLeans of the world, a guy who came up last year as a rookie who was 5-1 with an ERA hovering just above 2, the number 11 overall prospect in all of Major League Baseball. They say he's off limits and untouchable. Yeah, we've heard all that nonsense before. If they're willing to trade a guy like that, now we might be onto something. So we'll talk, maybe get into some permutations of what a Mason Miller deal might look like. This is some other day. This is right before the holiday season. We don't want to get you all, upset or worried or any of those things. But Mason Miller is a guy who apparently a lot of people really want to get their hands on. You saw how incredibly dominant he can be. Now, there was a whole bunch of speculation leading up to, just about a week or so ago when AJ Preller finally confirmed Mason Miller staying in the bullpen, right? And we talked about this, and I was very much for, if he wants to be a starting pitcher, give him a starting pitcher shot. You got to take your best assets and put him in places where you need to have the biggest impact. He's been a starter most of his life. He then became a closer in 2024 after a little bit of an elbow issue with the A's. Shut him down early after like 5 or 6 starts. Bring him back at the end of the year. He turns into the dominant closer that he has turned out to be. But Mason Miller went on MLB Network, talked to our good friend Matt Vasgersian and Harold Reynolds, and was asked, well, what about all this speculation and stuff? And actually, one thing that I am guilty of not actually thinking about here or considering is, what does Mason Miller want to do? Well, Mason Miller laid out in no uncertain terms what he would rather be doing, closing or starting.
I'm having a lot of success, doing what I've been doing these last couple of years. And, the reason that we ended up making the switch a couple of years ago was for health reasons. And, outside of one blip in 24, I've been able to do that and have a lot of success doing the high leverage late inning role. So, it kind of doesn't make any sense to me to go away from that right now. And I feel really good about where our bullpen is and being part of that group that I think is going to be one of the best in the league again.
No question, it's going to be one of the best, if not the best, in the league again. So there you have it, right from the horse's mouth. Yeah, he is a workhorse as well. That Mason Miller wants to stay in the bullpen where he can be that max effort guy, where he can be the guy who comes in and just shuts a game down. I mean, nobody wants to see that dude come in, especially with what happened after he landed with the San Diego Padres. All right, he talked about something that was actually very interesting. When you get guys who can throw 104 miles an hour, which he's been shown the ability to do on multiple occasions. I mean, the 104.5-mile-an-hour pitch to Carson Kelly right on the outside black in the wild card series is one of the greatest single pitches in the history of Major League Baseball, right? There's nothing you can do with that. So he's a dude who can throw hard. What you see with a lot of dudes who can throw hard is they don't know how to pitch. And what I'm talking about is being a thrower versus a pitcher. Let me tell you what I mean by that. If you're a thrower, you have unbelievable stuff, but you really don't know how to treat hitters, game plan them, set them up, show them different looks, or even really locate one really dominant pitch. That's kind of what happened to Tim Lincecum later in his career, right? Early in his career, he was 97, 98, 99, incredible late life on the fastball. He could miss in the strike zone, but his stuff was so electric, it didn't matter. Well, the problem is it didn't matter, so he never truly learned how to locate it. So tick that down a couple miles an hour, 94, 95, because later in his career, he's infinitely hittable because he never learned how to put the ball where he wanted to put it. That's why Greg Maddux was so good for so long, because he could put the ball literally anywhere he wanted to, anywhere on the strike zone at any given moment. He didn't have to. He could throw 97. He just didn't, other than 3 or 4 times a game when he had to reach out and get that, because all of his other stuff was so good he could put it wherever he wanted to. So that's the thing that Mason Miller, I think, has really learned, and he really picked it up after he got to the Padres. He was asked about being able to just go, hey, man, if I've got this weapon here, do you just say, you know what, mano a mano, screw you, I'm throwing this by you right now? How often does he do that? Because his slider is also very, very good. Remember, he had that immaculate inning, 9 pitches, 3 strikeouts. Doesn't happen very often. All 9 of those pitches were sliders. And Darnay have sat on this very podcast and said, as wacky as this sounds, because you're throwing 104, his slider might be his best pitch. And he's also kind of been tinkering with a changeup or a kind of a splinker that Paul Skeens has had so much success with. So he's learning how to deploy other weapons, even though what he has is insanely dominant, and really learning how to set hitters up and what he's looking for when he's facing opposing batters. It's actually very telling what he said when he was talking about whether or not he just says, I'm just going to throw this by you right now because I know I can. Listen to what Mason Miller said to the MLB Network crew. I think it's very telling and very encouraging for the Padres.
I don't know about that. I mean, I think that's where I get in trouble. I gave up that homer to Gurriel, and that was kind of that moment where I was like, I'm going to try and throw it by him, and he got me. But, I always, when I match up against Vladdy, I feel like I can hear his bat speed from the mound. I feel like I can hear the bat whooshing through the zone. So, it's always a mutual respect thing, trying to give guys different looks and not let them get too comfortable up there. I think that's when you get in trouble, is when you kind of let your ego get in the way and say, I'm going to try and just, throw this ball by somebody. Pitching's an art. It's not, how fast or how hard can I shove this ball in the zone, but, trying to get delicate and work the edges and expand. That's kind of where my success has come from.
I love that. I am applauding you, Mason Miller, because that is so fantastic to hear. And I want any little league player out there too. You get a lot of these kids who are, 12 years old and like 6'2" and throwing really hard. Well, they can just blow everybody away. They never really learn how to locate their stuff or really learn how to pitch. Mason Miller learned how to pitch, and it came after he got to San Diego. And this is going to be another one of our odes, or one of my odes to Ruben Niebla, because that guy is so insanely good at what he does. Let me tell you what he's talking about. By the way, Vladdy, obviously, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., the superstar from the Toronto Blue Jays, who had the unbelievable postseason run. Let me tell you what he did. The home run to Gurriel that he mentioned, that was on August 5th. It was Mason Miller's second outing with the San Diego Padres. He threw a 103.9-mile-an-hour fastball, and Gurriel smoked it out for a 2-run home run. Padres would win that game in extra innings, but it was a blown save for Miller. That was the fastest pitch that's ever been hit for a home run in the history of Major League Baseball. The StatCast era, obviously, going back to 2015, where we have a pretty accurate read on just how hard these guys are throwing. All right. So we got touched up by simply trying to outman the other guy. After that, listen to what Mason Miller did for the entirety of the rest of the regular season. He threw 24 innings, this is including the playoffs now, that incredible run he had against the Cubs. 24 innings. He allowed no runs, 4 hits with 50 strikeouts. Those are not even video game numbers. I mean, I'm not a video game guy, so I don't know what video game numbers do look like, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find even a person in a video game who could give up over 24 innings, 4 hits with 50 strikeouts and no runs allowed. So what he realized in that moment, and that's why this is so encouraging for his future, he learns, man, I've got to be able to get guys out other than with my pure stuff, right? So I guarantee you that Padres pitching coach Ruben Niebla got in his ear and said, listen, Mace, your stuff's off the charts. It's unreal. You're unbelievable. But you're going to have to do things a little different way, because you can't always just hump up and try and get one by a guy, because it doesn't matter how hard you throw it. If you put it in too big a piece of the strike zone, a major league hitter is going to find a way to get to it. And that's just the end of the story, period, paragraph, end of discussion. So when he really learned how to locate that fastball, as evidenced by the 104.5 mile an hour fastball right there on the outer third, right there on the outside corner to Carson Kelly, and learned how to locate that slider with the kind of consistency that he locates that slider with, and then tinkering with other stuff too. That's when Mason Miller, with unreal, pure, raw stuff, maybe the best raw stuff in baseball, took it to a whole new place. He went from here to here, because he then learned, I've got these weapons, but I'm going to use them in a way that pitchers with nowhere near my kind of stuff have a lot of success with. So you marry those two things. You got a guy with 104 and a nasty wipeout slider that also knows how to put it in the right place and when to throw it, because he knows he has the opposing hitter guessing. That's the recipe for, we haven't seen a closer win a Cy Young Award since Dennis Eckersley in 1989 or 90, I want to say. This is the recipe for having a dude win a Cy Young Award. Did Eric Gagne get one when he was all juiced up? I have to go back and check that out. I know he was a finalist. I don't know if he won the Cy Young Award or not, but it's been a very long time since a natural closer has won the Cy Young Award. Of course, Mark Davis of the Padres did back in 1988, but you don't have closers win Cy Young Awards anymore. If he does this and keeps this approach for the entirety of a season, and he goes out there over 60, 65 games and has a sub 1 earned run average and has 105, 110 strikeouts, and saves 60 games and gives it maybe 2 home runs the entire season, isn't that the kind of guy who's going to be able to be in the legitimate Cy Young Award talk and candidacy? I think that it is. And that's another reason why, if he's figured this out since he got to the Padres, how much better are the Padres pitching staff, coaching staff, and pitching staff than the A's is? And how valuable is he? And that's why teams like the Mets are saying, hey, we'll toy with the idea of giving you our top prospects for a guy like this. And then you also look at that and I hear that and I go, well, maybe Mason Miller now is squarely in the untouchable realm, unless you can, again, fill 3 or 4 holes with legitimate, highly capable major league ball players for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years, who are not your, prospects or suspects unless they show you that they're otherwise. Really legitimate guys who can help the Padres and maybe fill 3 or 4 holes by creating this one where you still have guys in the organization who can be closer types. So that's the whole thought on Mason Miller. And I was really impressed with what he was saying about pitching and not just throwing. And a lot of guys never learn that lesson. And even with him, and with the 3rd year of his career, has already got that down pat. Incredibly impressive learning curve that Mason Miller does have. And I want to go back to the WBC thing, because not only has Mason Miller joined Team USA as one of the bigger bullpen arms out there, and by the way, former Padre David Bedard, he's also been named to the team. He's a multiple-time All-Star, so the bullpen is going to be really good. But the bullpen for Major League Baseball, for Team USA, has always been really good at the World Baseball Classic. The lineup the offensive players and offensive pieces for Team USA at the World Baseball Classic has always been really, really good. But they've only won it once in 2017. And the big weak link that they've had is their starting rotation, because they've never had Clayton Kershaw has never taken part. He was an injury scratch a couple of years ago. Justin Verlander has never taken part. Max Scherzer has never taken part. Garrett Cole has never taken part. When he was a stud, Madison Bumgarner never took part. They have been getting away with guys who are either way past their prime or maybe like a starter here and there who's pretty good, but they have not had true, sensational, top of the line starting pitching. And that's where Team Japan has always been so good, because Team Japan has always had Yu Darvish has always been there. And although he won't be this year as he recovers from the elbow reconstruction surgery he's undergoing, but they've had Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Shohei Ohtani, Roki Sasaki, Kodai Senga, Daisuke Matsuzaka. The best pitchers in Japan have always pitched in WBC for Team Japan. It's been more of a country pride thing, and they don't mind so much getting out of their rotation and getting out of their routine to go and do that for their home country. The pitchers in America have been not wanting to do that because it gets you out of your routine. And Miller even touched on this when talking about why he would be willing to do it as a reliever. Relief pitchers, you don't really get out of your routine, right? You're throwing a bullpen every now and again. You're going out of 1 inning stints during spring training to get ready for the season anyway. Relievers are totally cool with that. It doesn't bug them at all. But then you have guys like you saw in 2023, Nick Martinez, when he was with the Padres. He actually came back from Team USA after starting just 1 game because he wasn't getting on his routine. He wasn't able to continue building up for the season the way that he wanted to. And that's been the issue with starting pitchers, especially for Team USA. They don't want to go through that process. So this is the list of guys who from 2006 to 2023 have started games for Team USA. And I wrote down the entire list. Jake Peavy, 06, the year before his Cy Young year. So that's really one of the best ones on this list. A 43-year-old Roger Clemens, Dontrell Willis, Roy Oswald, who was getting past his prime, Ted Lilly, Jeremy Guthrie, Ryan Vogelsong, Derek Holland, Gio Gonzalez, R.A. Dickey. Now, Dickey was coming off the 2012 Cy Young Award, but he's a knuckleballer. It was one of the weirdest Cy Young votes I've ever seen. He was a knuckleballer. In 2017, it was Chris Archer, Danny Duffy, Drew Smiley, and Marcus Stroman. And in 2023, it was Merrill Kelly, Lance Lynn, Nick Martinez, and a 42-year-old Adam Wainwright. Okay. That's not great, right? That's certainly not going to get you something that's going to be able to truly contend with the best starting pitchers and the best lineups in the entire world. This year is different, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to see all of these guys together. You got Aaron Judge as your captain. You got Cal Raleigh behind the plate. Listen, hopefully Jackson Merrill joins him as an outfielder at some point, but the lineup is absolutely loaded. Kyle Schwarber is going to be there. The lineup is, it's insane. The offense is going to be there, right? But the offense has always been there. Also on the same day, which is Thursday that I'm recording this podcast, that Mason Miller said he's going to join the Team USA WBC Classic team. Logan Webb and Tarek Skubal both said, we're going on the team as well. Okay, now we're talking, right? Because Paul Skeens was already a part of this. They also landed Joe Ryan, the Twins ace, and Clay Holmes and Nolan McLean from the Mets. All right, so let me tell you who they have now just as their starting rotation options. Reigning Cy Young Award winner, Paul Skeens. 2-time reigning Cy Young Award winner, Tarek Skubal, both in their primes, by the way, and 2 of the most dominant pitchers in all of Major League Baseball. Logan Webb, entering his age 29 season, who has been a 2-time All-Star and has 3 consecutive top 6 Cy Young Award finishes in his own right. He's the ace of the Giants staff. Then you have this Joe Ryan kid. Clay Holmes is the 2-time All-Star with the New York Mets. And then the Mets are also sending Nolan McLean, the guy I talked about a second ago, the number 11 prospect in Major League Baseball. Now, a couple of years, pretty much any other year, Holmes and McLean would have been like the headliners in this. Logan Webb would have been a bonus. He'd be like, oh, there's your opening round starter right there. No question. I mean, he's that guy. They've got Paul Skeens and Tarek Skubal on top of this rotation. This is going to be the most talented, loaded, top to bottom American team in the World Baseball Classic you have ever and maybe will ever see. It's wild. And I have a theory as to why this is suddenly happening this year. And it goes back to the very last moments of the 2023 World Baseball Classic. What was the last part of that? It was Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. And here we go. That was not just great baseball. Power against power, teammate against teammate, friend against friend, country against country. That was theater. I get goosebumps just going back and watching that showdown. And when Ohtani just reached back and blew away Mike Trout, one of the greatest hitters of our or any other generation, to end that and give Team Japan the World Baseball Classic championship so the U.S. couldn't repeat, I think all these other guys, especially the young players, I mean, Skeens was at LSU when that happened, when he was watching that, you know? Screwball was kind of becoming himself, the pride of Seattle University, when he was, figuring out how he was going to be as a professional baseball player. Mason Miller was in the minor leagues. None of these guys, Logan Webb had just kind of come on the scene. It was becoming a thing for the Giants. They all watched that as young, impressionable baseball players. And they said, that's what this is about. I want that moment. They want the moment, the biggest of big stages, the greatest against the greats. And when they saw a guy like Ohtani out there on the mound, right before he had to have another Tommy John surgery, by the way, they see him out there competing his ass off. And then you see Mike Trout, the guy who was, he was like the American captain. He was the dude, right? Going in and tipping his cap to his teammate because he got him on that one. It's the sportsmanship and the drama that moment created. I guarantee you, every one of those guys said, I want to be there. And the only way I can be there, because I can't buy a ticket because I'm in spring training, is to compete for it. So that was the thing. So thank you, Shohei Ohtani, for being so stinking good that Americans want to say, I want to be the guy who does what that guy did. The greatest baseball player of all time. And yes, I am ready to say that Shohei Ohtani is the greatest baseball player anyone has ever seen. He's one of one. Babe Ruth would have aspired to be Ohtani. All right. He's the greatest we have ever seen. I don't know if he's the greatest we will ever seen. Probably is in my lifetime. But I'm 50 and more than halfway through my lifetime. So there may be another one that comes along at some point. He's the best you'll ever see. To see that guy going out and doing what he did and willingly doing what he did for club and country, whatever they want to say. That's when all these dudes said, yes, I'm in. I want to be part of this moment of everything that's going on with the World Baseball Classic. So I think another thing that as a part of that is you go back to 2017 and you see at Petco Park, Manny Machado playing for the Dominican Republic hits a rocket to right center field, and here comes San Diego native Adam Jones climbing the wall, making one of the greatest catches you will ever see in a baseball game, let alone in the World Baseball Classic. And everybody, on the 5th anniversary of that, I did a story with Manny Machado and Adam Jones about that catch. The catch was so iconic and so amazing, and those guys both still, to this day, bring it back, and they think about it. And what's so cool about it is, just like Ohtani and Trout were teammates at that time, Machado and Jones at the time, they were teammates in Baltimore. So there's this love and this respect and this camaraderie that you have when you want to. It's like being, want to beat your brother. If you're a big brother, you don't ever want your little brother to beat you. If you're a little brother, you always want to beat your big brother. Same happens with sisters. Big sister never wants to lose little sister. Little sister cannot wait to the time they get to beat their big sister. It's like that with these teammates. And that's why the World Baseball Classic is so stinking much fun. And I hate that it's every 3 years, because I'd love to see it every year, but it has so much more impact that it happens every 3 years, because you're going to have these guys pitching and hitting against guys who they're great friends with, but they're wearing a different uniform because they were born in another country. It's going to be so incredibly much fun to watch and see what's happening with the WBC. I could not be more excited, and I've loved watching every single one of them, and I cannot wait for the time it comes back to Petco Park, because it was such a great atmosphere. And by the way, if you're hearing this in a different part of the country, Houston, Miami, wherever it might be, or a different part of the world, if you're in Tokyo and you can go watch some of these games, I implore you, do it. They are so much fun. It's a whole different way of watching baseball. Go check it out, man. It'll make you appreciate baseball all over again and kind of show you how it's gotten more loosened up. You know, you don't have the stuffiness so much. That's why I really believe the World Baseball Classic is part of the reason we now have a lot of these rules changes, because they've shown everyone that the joy they play with in the Dominican Winter League, where guys are, you know, bat flipping and strutting their stuff and pimping everything out, and the people are in the stands and they're hitting their boomsticks and they're shaking things and they're going crazy and they're chanting and they're waving flags everywhere. Everyone saw how cool that is. And if you got to go to any of those games, you got to experience it and take part in it, and you know how cool that is and how much more fun that makes the whole atmosphere. That's part of the reason that baseball has had these rule changes. Put the pitch clock in, which has worked brilliantly. Make the bases a little bit bigger. Do a few of these things to make the game go faster, but also just loosen things up. So WBC has been, as far as I'm concerned, an absolute resounding success, and I cannot wait to see Mason Miller, hopefully still with the Padres, throwing in that, and Paul Skeens and Tarek Skubal and all these dudes who are truly now we can say America's putting their best team out on the field, something that has never happened in the now 19-year history of this event. It's just going to be absolutely awesome. All right, we are not going to have an episode the next 2 weeks for On Fire because Thursday is Christmas Day. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas to all who celebrate. And then the week after that is New Year's Day. And we will be, of course, doing a whole bunch of college bowl game kind of stuff that day. So next couple of weeks, unless there is something big that happens, Darnay will hop on here for an emergency podcast. We do something like that. If there's a major trade, if there's a major free agent signing, we'll jump on and we'll keep you all up to date. And we'll give you all of our takes on all of the permutations and the musings and the different mechanisms that are moving in Major League Baseball, especially involving your San Diego Padres. So since this may be the very last one of 2025, allow me to say thank you. Thank you to everyone who's watched any of these. Thank you to everyone who's commented. Thank you to anyone who has had any kind of an idea that they've sent us, participated, shown us the support that has grown this thing over the last 6 years. We truly enjoy doing it. Sometimes you never realize if anybody's actually out there listening. Y'all are absolutely out there listening, and I could not thank you more for just being part of the journey with us, for being Padres fans, for supporting the wonderful adopted hometown of San Diego for me. So this is really, really awesome. Really awesome to be able to do this, talk Padres baseball with you, and have a little fun and do some bashing of some opposing players and former players along the way, but also just praising the team and the organization that we have here, and just trying to, the bottom line, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. But I hope you all know that everything I and we do and say on here at any time, it's always honest, it's always from the heart, and it's always from the Friar Faithful's perspective. We try to be your podcast to try to represent you and do the best we can to try and get your opinions and your desires out there, so we can be maybe a voice for everyone here in San Diego, just trying to bring that first World Series championship right home to America's finest city. Thanks again for listening. If we don't see you again until next year, thanks again. Happy holidays. Please be safe. Love your family members as we love you guys. We will see you later, and go Padres.